No one said it would be easy. The U.S. has been trying to keep illegal immigrants out of the country since the Border Patrol was first established back in 1924. As the president predicted when he allowed Title 42 to expire, the road has been rocky and chaotic. It's been a humanitarian crisis of the highest order, with immigrants, including many children, finding that this is not the land of opportunity they were promised by the smugglers who in many cases brought them over. And of course, there's the political fallout, with many saying the situation at the border as it stands now, with no firm immigration policy, is unsustainable and dangerous, both for Americans and immigrants. Last month, I went to the Yuma sector of the border when the proverbial gates Title 42 had presented were lifted. I saw thousands of immigrants, not just from Mexico, El Salvador, and Guatemala coming across, but also from Africa and Haiti. So now, fast forward 1 month into this uncharted territory, 12 News heads back to that same area to find out what, if anything, has changed. Joe Dana just returned from the Yuma sector, and tonight we take an in-depth look at where we stand.
For better or worse, Yuma is linked to the world, sending produce across the globe daily, receiving hundreds of migrants from more than 130 countries, also daily. Many wondered how life here might be impacted after the end of a 3-year pandemic policy.
We anticipated with the lifting of 42 that the numbers would have grown exponentially, but they haven't. They've scaled back.
The Department of Homeland Security recently declared its post-Title 42 plan is working as intended. Border crossings are down. In the Yuma sector, covering 126 miles of border, voluntary surrenders are around 200 to 400 a day, as opposed to many times that amount just before and after the policy change.
Numbers have dropped to the point where it's, I guess, status quo for the last 2 years.
A status quo that historically is still high. From May 12th to June 1st, DHS reported sending 38,400 migrants who crossed the U.S. southern border back to their home countries.
And let's not forget, the numbers represent real people, people desperate to get here, people trying to help, people worried about their border communities. What this new policy change means is harsher punishments for those caught, and although there are more ways to apply for asylum, the bar to get it remains high.
Another donation on its way to the immigration shelter. County Supervisor Jonathan Lines and his family coordinate help from locals.
For the most part, our concern, even though they're illegal, are not the people who are giving themselves up. In talking with them, it kind of breaks your heart.
The most vulnerable, the kids.
Ya estoy feliz.
6-year-old Mateo arrived here Saturday night with his mom and sister, turning themselves in at the border after a 6-week journey they told us cost about $2,000.
¿Te gusta Spider-Man? Batman?
Mateo knows American movies. Whether he grows up in America is tough to say. More on why in a moment.
A lot of work, a lot of logistics on the ground.
I met Mateo at this nonprofit health center where they handle COVID cases, health care, and travel arrangements. Amanda Aguirre runs the nonprofit, which is reimbursed by the federal government. The past month, they've seen an increasingly diverse group of migrants.
You're seeing them right now from everywhere, from Russia to several countries in Africa to Ecuador. How do you accommodate them all?
Well, thanks to Google Translation, we're able to communicate. If you visit our site, you'll see that we have speakers. And at one time, you can hear Chinese or French or Russian.
Those getting services here turn themselves in to Border Patrol.
Since the lifting of Title 42, how has the job of Border Patrol changed?
The job never changes. You know, we're still here to enforce the law. The only thing that's changed is the amount of people that have started coming in.
How?
It's decreased in the past few weeks, but it's not to say that we're not busy.
One benefit of fewer asylum seekers, instead of spending so much time processing migrants, Border Patrol agents can focus more resources on line enforcement, smugglers. Earlier this month, they seized a near-record amount of fentanyl during a stop on Highway 8.
So is that an example of Border Patrol being able to focus more on enforcement as opposed to processing?
Correct, yeah. So absolutely, if we're able to and get out there and the agents are able to do the work of patrolling the line, those kinds of seizures are very significant.
Another new policy, expansion of large processing centers. Migrants who turn themselves in here in the Yuma sector stay temporarily in those Big white tents, that's a processing center near the U.S. Border Patrol headquarters. One of the new strategies that the U.S. government is deploying is working with other governments to set up processing centers in their countries. One is up and running in Guatemala. A second goes up next week in Colombia. But in addition to easier access for applicants, penalties for migrants caught illegally are stiffer under the new Biden policy, including a 5-year ban.
The president, to his credit, instituted that 5-year ban for people who are caught, and so that has slowed some people down. Others have grown a little bit more impatient, and that's why they are not turning themselves in.
More local help is also on the way. Earlier this month, Governor Hobbs announced to Yuma County border communities a $25 million injection of state funds for communication upgrades, expanding car fleets, and hiring more personnel. But local officials still talk about the need for national reform.
And until we see a dramatic shift in policy and messaging, I'm never going to be in that comfortable position of saying, yeah, this is going to work for us.
Yuma Mayor Doug Nichols worries too many migrants are arriving with false hope. Most will be expelled at a massive cost to the federal government. The city of Yuma says this processing center alone costs the feds $42 million a month.
And I think what we need to really do is start to dive into what that term asylum means, because I don't believe in my exposure to the people coming across that it's really an asylum claim that is based upon threat of life.
That brings us back to Mateo, talking to his mom about her asylum claim. It involves tough economic conditions in Ecuador, but it's not clear that would meet the credible fear hardship needed to qualify her to stay. For now, they'll fly to Minnesota to stay with relatives and await a court date. If they must go back,
¿Qué va a hacer?
Me tocará regresar ya.
Miriam says it will have been worth trying.
And Mark, get this, if you're lucky enough to get a court date and you're not immediately expelled, the date could be 2025. So you literally have people here for 2 or 3 years before they even show up for their first court date applying for asylum. That's part of the problem here. A lot of people here in limbo, their kids will start going to school, they'll start trying to find work, but they don't have an official status.
And then once you establish life, all of a sudden you get yanked back out. Speaking of kids, one issue that came up for you is DNA testing of migrant children. Up until May, we know that kids were tested so that the Border Patrol could confirm familial relations. Has that testing stopped?
We don't know for sure. We do know, though, a U.S. senator reintroduced legislation last week to force DNA testing of children and adults who arrive together to confirm they are related if they claim they are family. DNA testing is a way to prevent trafficking of children. Now, when I asked Homeland Security if the program is still in effect, they told me they cannot comment because of pending litigation. Privacy advocates raise concerns the testing is intrusive and not necessarily helpful because many families that cross the border are foster families. The head of the Regional Border Health Center, though, who, Mark, you've met, she says continued DNA testing appears to be the best solution.
That's the only way that you're going to identify someone bringing children that should not be coming with another person. I know that the Border Patrol, is trained to identify body language and the child, how that behaves, but the DNA will assure you.
We do know DNA testing of adult legal border crossers continues. Illegal border crossers. That program began under the Trump administration. The results are compared to an FBI database of convicted felons.
And Joe, the other thing is these huge gaps in the border wall. I saw them. I know you saw them down in the Yuma sector. They're in place in different parts along the border. Local elected leaders are pounding the pulpit, understandably, about the need to close those gaps.
Absolutely. And you'll find that these leaders don't care so much about who closes the gaps. They don't care about the politics. They just want more action. The Ducey administration, you will remember, garnered attention late last year for its $100 million shipping container fix on 3 of those gaps. The feds sued. The containers were gone by the beginning of this year. The fact remains, closing gaps in the Yuma area would not just alleviate a burden on Border Patrol, but the city.
Secretary Mayorkas committed to the mayor and myself in a closed meeting 15, 16 months ago that he was going to close up 9 of the 11 gaps. 1.5 of those gaps have been closed, but we still have all of the other open areas along the border. But if they wanted to get serious about it, they could do it.
Can you call back the secretary and say, hey, where are the rest of these?
We've asked.
What are they
and,
telling you?
They're working on it, you know.
We did go to a spot where Ducey held that news conference last year with the containers. Work is ongoing to complete a segment of the wall, but it's slow. We reached out to Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas to ask, what's the deal? What happened to his verbal commitment to those local leaders like Supervisor Lines of Yuma? Homeland Security told me yesterday they're working on a response. Still no comment. So Mark, point once again is that, and since I've covered this, over 20 years, you see the ebbs and flows of immigration at the border. Everyone from Homeland Security on down to mayors, they say the same thing. Congress needs to pass meaningful immigration reform to solve many of these problems we continue to see.
I don't think they're wrong. I think Congress does need to step up and for once and for all, fix this.
Absolutely.
All right, Joe, thanks. Great reporting, by the way.